part of I have copies of my statement here for everyone if they're interested. I'll leave them here. Well, I'm happy to tone today. My name is Frank Jack Fiamingo. I'm the president of the New Jersey Second Amendment Society. Before one can talk intelligently about regulating human rights, it is important to understand what they are and where they come from. Rights do not come from, nor are they granted by governments. Government can only attempt to interfere with human rights. That is why the choice of the type of government, if there is a choice, is so important. In the United States of America, our founders very wisely chose the form of government known as constitutional republic. It was an eye-opener for me when I first discovered this. Like most people, I believed that we lived in a democracy. But the primary difference between the two makes organization under a constitutional republic far preferable, far superior over a democracy. We found out just how important this difference is during the 1960s to the civil rights movement. In a democracy, the majority may vote away the rights of the minority.
1 minute.
We see this, we were told that we would have 10 minutes. I got a call from your office last night, Senator North Russell. Group left. Group left. That's okay. In a democracy, the majority may vote away the rights of the minority. We see this happening all over the world today with disastrous results. This approach has resulted in widespread civil unrest, persecution, and even genocide. This approach, under the protection of a constitutional republic, we hold that there are certain unalienable rights of the people that they retain by virtue of being born human rather than as a beast of burden. Whether or not you believe these rights are God-given or natural rights, they exist independent and separate from the establishment of government. Certain of these rights were deemed so important by our founders that they were enumerated in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. The right that we are concerned with here today in New Jersey and across the nation is one of those rights. The Second Amendment to the Constitution does not grant the right to keep and bear arms. This bears repeating. The Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States does not grant the right to keep and bear arms. Our founders merely recognized the pre-existing human right to self-preservation and included the Second Amendment as a warning to the government not to infringe upon that right of the people. They correctly recognize that governments can only interfere with our rights if we, the people, allow it. In that light, we can examine the primary purpose of the Second Amendment, which is to keep the balance of power in the hands of the people where it belongs in a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Despite what those who oppose our right to keep and bear arms may believe, it is not about hunting. It is not about merely self-defense. The right to keep and bear arms is primarily about our right to protect our lives, loved ones, property, and perhaps most importantly, our liberty. This is not a squabble between gun nuts and the rest of society. This is a struggle to retain our right to independence, even to the point of defending ourselves from a government who might at some point not overstep its authority and attempt to rule the people in a manner which they do not approve. In such a case, arms would be the last, but perhaps the most important resort of the people. It does not matter how likely this is to occur. It does not even matter whether or not such resistance to tyranny would be successful. It matters that we, the people, have the right to our independence and our liberty. In closing, this is not a question of whether or not we have the right to keep and bear arms. That is self-evident. And it is not a question of which arms, how many arms, and what capacity the government believes that we should have. It is about our right of self-government, self-determination. Remember how this nation was formed. We had to fight against the tyranny of British rule in order to have our ability to live our own lives as independent, responsible individuals. It is not up to the bureaucrats in the state to determine how we choose to defend our freedom. Thank you.
Woo! Yeah.
I'm well aware of moving from Virginia to New Jersey, what it means to your freedom when you enter this state. Certainly on gun rights. Because there's a lot to cover here, I'm going to speak. I know Scott Bach with our state association is going to hit some of the bills individually, but I'm going to talk about the general field premise of gun control a little bit. New Jersey has the second toughest laws in the country, and that's well established by many of the speakers here and will continue to be. So my question to you is, why pile on to that? And for everybody that says, well, we can do better, and New Jersey's we want to be the role model for gun safety laws. I think the rest of the country would dispute that, especially when they turn on the news and they see individuals like Brian Aiken with a 7-year prison sentence, or they turn on the news and see someone on Facebook with their son posing with a .22 rifle who ends up having law enforcement come to their house. New Jersey's anything but a model for gun safety. If you want a state that's a model for gun safety, look at the states like Vermont, South Dakota, Florida, Texas, Michigan, where there are almost 500,000 permit holders. There are many, many states that I would point to ahead of New Jersey with respect to balancing public safety and the Second Amendment rights. And this stuff isn't new. New Jersey already has a 15-round magazine limit. New Jersey already has an assault weapons ban. And yet, crime remains just as high in the state. What should that tell us? It tells us that these laws fail. And there's a reason these laws fail. It was just released not long ago in the news. It was a Syracuse study that showed that there were 76,000 people that failed their background checks, either lied before them or failed them. Of those, and I'm speeding this up, but there were 44 that were prosecuted. 44 out of 76,000. What that tells me is we have plenty of laws on the books. We're not enforcing the ones that are there.
Yeah.
CEO, the members in our magazine, I printed them off. There are 10 different laws here. U.S. Criminal Code, where it's a violation to traffic guns, it's a violation to steal guns. This stuff is all on the books right now. Now, the specific bills here, I couldn't point to a better bill than the 50 caliber ban bill. It was said that we're not taking guns out of anybody's hands. Well, that's exactly what this bill does. It takes firearms out of law-abiding citizens' hands. But really, we've challenged the proponents of this legislation over and over again. Name me one case in New Jersey or the country where 50 caliber rifle has been used in the commission of a crime. I'm still waiting for my phone to ring. This is just another example of passing more laws to say we did something. We did something. Well, we did something that didn't do anything but punish law-abiding citizens. Now, I will close with one final observation. I do this in a lot of states. I've lobbied in 10 states, and every hearing plays out similar to this. And as I turn over my right shoulder, I see a room full of law-abiding citizens, people who took off time from work to come down here and fight for their constitutional rights. That's not the important part. The important part is who you don't see here today. You don't see the criminals. You don't see the drug dealers. And you know why you don't see them? Because they don't care what you pass. They're going to continue to break the law.
Yeah. Woo! Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Woo!
Committee members, I'm Scott Bach. I'm Executive Director of the Association of New Jersey Rifle Pistol Clubs. I'm also a former member of law enforcement. I just want to state for the record, we were told last night we'd each have 10 minutes each. I'm going to start with a cut and slash statement and then hit a couple of points on the bills. I'm speaking today on behalf of New Jersey's 1 million law-abiding gun owners and sportsmen. We come from all walks of life, from every imaginable demographic, and from every political party. We mourn Newtown along with the rest of the nation, and we agree that something needs to be done to protect our schools and to address deficiencies in the mental health system. But we also recognize that no law will ever stop someone bent on doing evil, because someone bent on doing evil will not give up just because one particular tool is unavailable. If an airliner can be brought down by a box cutter, does anyone really believe that banning box cutters will stop the next terrorist? We also know that criminals and madmen do not follow laws. They don't buy guns from dealers, they don't submit to background checks, and they definitely don't respect gun bans or capacity limits or any of the laws you're considering today. The gun owners in this room are no more responsible for what happened in Newtown than are the legislators in this room. Simply for existing. New Jersey doesn't need any more gun laws. Nothing being proposed today will stop another crime or prevent another tragedy. That's my statement. I just want to, in a short amount of time, get a couple of points. Regarding S-2723, and that is what I call the Senator Sweeney Omnibus Bill. Senate President, when you spoke before, you said that, now my big question about this bill is why? Why throw out the FID card? Why create a new system? And you said a couple of things, and I just want to correct some facts. You said that right now, the state doesn't require a photo ID when you purchase a firearm. And that is true. The state doesn't. But the U.S., the federal government does. So right now, anybody who wants to purchase a firearm anywhere in the United States, including the Garden State, must have a photo ID. They cannot purchase without it, period, end of story. Now, if the state simply wanted to add a photo to the existing ID card, it would be a simple matter, but it's a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. You also said something, Senator Sweeney, that also needs to be corrected, and you did say that there's no mental health check, okay, at the point of purchase. And let me just say, that is correct. But what was omitted is that there is a mental health check before you even get the permit to purchase. So in other words, when I get an FID card, or when I get a permit to purchase a handgun, I can't get that until I have signed a waiver and the state records on people who have been committed are searched. New Jerseyans already submit to a mental health check. Now, we're not opposed to adding these things to the NICS system, okay, provided there's due process. But the point is that for this bill, which basically trashes something that's a system that's existed for 40 years or some odd, okay, that basically touches every gun owner, creates a bureaucracy, imposes a training requirement. These are all not solutions to crime. Okay, anybody who thinks that a criminal is going to be stopped because we now have a photo ID card that gets swiped, criminals are outside the system. They don't submit to background checks. Can I just ask how much time is left to the group? Is there, how much time is left? Because there's another speaker here. I'm sorry? Okay, I'm gonna let the Federation of Sportsmen's Clubs speak, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Woo, yeah.
Honorable ladies and gentlemen, my name is Pat Glazer. I live in Salem County. I'm here to testify on behalf of the New Jersey State Federation of Sportsmen's Clubs, the Hunters and Trappers, and we represent over 150,000 outdoorsmen and women, and I will refer to our organization as the Federation. First, let me say that the Federation stands with Scott and the Association of New Jersey Rifle and Pistol Clubs on every point they make. Secondly, the Federation's biggest fear is that any of these proposed bills would stop sport hunting in New Jersey with the drastic conditions that would result. Thus, the Federation finds all the concept proposed in Bills 2178, the 50 caliber ban, and Bill 2723, especially toxic. And the Federation opposes any restriction on magazine capacity or ammunition sales. It's particularly appropriate for me to address these points. I'm chair of the Federation's Firearms Committee, corporate secretary for the Federation, hunter liaison for the Association of New Jersey Rifle and Pistol Clubs, a Second Amendment sister. My ancestors were patriots in 1776. I was raised, as most people in Salem County were, with a hunting heritage and taught to shoot as a child by my late father, who was a decorated career naval officer. I'm an NRA certified firearms instructor in rifle, pistol, shotgun, and refuse to be a victim and a range officer. One of my sons is a police officer, and as a grandmother, I have withstood 2 attempted home invasions with my guns, and on 2 other occasions defended my family with a firearm. The Federation opposes Bill the .50 caliber ban because it will ban firearms used for hunting deer and large predators in New Jersey, bears, coyotes, feral pigs, etc. And it fails to recognize that New Jersey hunters assist in game management in other states and countries where large caliber firearms and ammunition are required. In an inability to manage large predator populations creates a catastrophe of unmeasurable proportions everywhere large predators are found. And New Jersey hunters' firearms ownership should not be restricted to only the firearms used to hunt in New Jersey, because New Jersey hunters also legally hunt elsewhere. The Federation opposes Bill 2723. First, because it proposes to replace a currently good-for-life FID card and separate photo ID driver license system that's working quite well and is federally mandated with one expensive, temporary, privacy-invading combination FID driver's license card. So every time I would use this new combination card as ID at banks, stores, doctors and dentist's office, hotels, car rental agencies, etc., places where one's driver's license is copied for their files, the card would show you own guns. And that invades my privacy and puts my safety at risk. Plus, 2723 proposes to create an entirely new bureaucracy combined with the DMV to issue these combination cards, which would expire regularly with the resulting renewal fees and bureaucratic backup. This concept is unnecessary, it's wasteful, and privacy-invading. The Federation opposes it. We shouldn't be replacing a good working system with something of lesser quality that costs more and exposes people to risk. We should be saving tax dollars, not wasting them. We should be keeping our citizens safe. We should be guarding privacy. Second, 2723 proposes everyone should have firearms training just to own firearms, ignoring the fact that firearms investors don't shoot their guns, thus have no need for training. It also proposes training people before they're vetted by the NICS system, which means that some people who won't pass a NICS investigation and therefore shouldn't be trained will be trained. And if that's not enough, 2723 allows non-shooters to help determine training requirements, and that is ridiculous. Non-shooters have no place at the training table. They have no expertise in firearms or firearm safety. If they want to learn about guns, let them take a course. They don't belong in any group that weighs in on training. This proposal makes as much sense as having someone who doesn't drive determine what should be on the driver's test. The Federation opposes it. Private sales between persons who have already had background checks and been vetted by the state simply to run these sales through FFL dealers. This only burdens law-abiding citizens by taking more time and costing more money. Criminals do not buy guns with FID cards, permits, or go through FFL dealers. They go outside the system. This will delay firearm purchase by hunters and others urgently needing a firearm for self-defense. The Federation opposes it. Honored ladies and gentlemen, the Federation thanks you for your consideration of our position as fellow citizens who provide an important and necessary contribution to the good life we all enjoy here in New Jersey. I thank you for the opportunity to address you today.
Yeah! Woo! Yeah! Mike's.
folks. Thank you for your testimony. Next. There's Senator Sweeney.
I apologize, Senator, and I'm sitting in on this committee because I do this with major issues, from pension benefit reform to marriage equality. And we could disagree on some things, and you know, I could have made some mistakes, Scott, but the privacy issue is not true. It's clearly not true, and I just wanted to make that statement now on that license. So, you know, there's going to be bills and hearings are done for a reason. If mistakes are made, to correct them. But I'm not going to let that inaccuracy go. Thank you.
Thank you. Next group.
Next group is Nicola McClure, Dave Matos, and Brian Miller, Ceasefire, New Jersey. Colleen Moore, Mayor of Fanwood, Mayors Against Illegal Guns. Joe Truman, Ethical Culture. And Rebecca Feldman, Million Moms.
Uh-oh, get ready to cry for the children.
Where's the tissue box? I'm about to exploit.
Sally Struthers moment.
Yeah, exploitation begins now.
Welcome, Mayor. Mayor, if you would. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the Senate Law and Public Safety Committee. Thank you for inviting me here today. My name is Colleen Moore. I am the mayor in the borough of Fanwood in Union County. I'm also a member of the Mayors Against Illegal Guns. I'm a mother, and I am very proud to be here today to speak to you regarding this package of bills. I first want to say that I think it is a credit to Senate President Sweeney that the process and the hearing so far, the dialogue has been open and has been transparent, and regardless of what side of the issue that you are on, that you have listened and taken a lot of information in. I became mayor a decade ago, and when I got sworn in, there was a tragic shooting in Mississippi that left several people dead. That caught my attention. And as a new mayor, I had to start thinking about these issues with respect to how it might impact whether it's my community or the surrounding community that I live in New Jersey. And over the last 10 years, we've seen repeated episodes of gun violence that are completely unacceptable to most Americans. Now, in the wake of the Newtown killings, we must honor the census loss of 26 young lives and take action to stem the tide of violence. While Americans are vocally supportive of sensible gun control, the United States Congress cannot act, and that was a shame. But I'm proud that the New Jersey legislators have demonstrated more courage to craft bills that will address issues. Regarding Senate Bill 2723, the most important feature of this legislation is the point of purchase background checks, the requirement for parties involved in private gun sales between friends, for instance, to go to the nearest licensed dealer for an instant background check. Background check technology is available, and it is a reasonable precaution to assure that guns are kept in safe hands. Of course, we understand that there will be criminals. Of course, we understand that criminal activity, illegal guns, illegal trafficking will still occur. But this bill makes it just a little bit harder for those guns to get into the hands of bad guys. They will no longer be able to engage in a private sale with an honest broker. By resisting a background check, the bad guys will expose their ill intent, and hopefully the sale will get squashed. If it saves one life, it's worth it, but the evidence has shown that universal background checks can do more than save one life. While the bill is not completely perfect from where we sit, we do see the proposal to extend the life of an open permit to purchase the handgun from 90 days to 4 years is a concern, and we will continue to work with the Senate President on those issues. Neither does any of the bill propose any restrictions on high-capacity clips, but we believe that maybe that issue will also be addressed. But in conclusion, as you've heard before, we cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good. This is a package that does have many positive aspects. I know there will be more to follow, and I look forward to keeping New Jersey at the forefront of sensible gun regulation in the United States of America. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Brian Miller, Executive Director of Team God's Call, and just want to make some general comments and then turn it over to other people to talk about specifics.
Jerseyans for safety from gun violence, and we applaud the Assembly President, the Senate President, pardon me, the Chairman, and the Majority Leader for undertaking to improve New Jersey's gun laws, without a doubt. This is a good thing. We do have some questions and some issues about specific issues, but overall it's great to see New Jersey legislators take the lead on such an important issue. Some comments on what you've heard before, just briefly. Mr. Fiumingo gave us a really nice lecture on rights. It was a wonderful speech, but of no bearing on what you're considering today. As nothing you're considering today tramples on anyone's rights as defined by the United States Supreme Court, and that's important to know. I know also that you heard that the .50 caliber sniper rifle is used for hunting in New Jersey. It's totally incorrect. There are guns that are used that are .50 caliber and higher that are used for hunting. Absolutely, we have no difficulty with those guns, and we sought to craft with the Senate President and with the Assembly to make sure that those guns are exempted. But sniper rifles are a different story. They're made to destroy material targets that this state is dotted with, including refineries, chemical plants, passenger aircraft, and so on. They have no place in a civil society. And I'd like to say also that, in fact, what you heard that New Jersey's gun laws do not work, that's nonsense. In fact, New Jersey has the third lowest per capita rate of gun death in the United States. It's not a mistake. We are the most crowded state. One would expect just the opposite. But in fact, our gun laws work to protect every citizen, including law-abiding gun owners, from gun violence. Now,
excuse me for a moment. With respect to people speaking here, I gave some latitude in the first group, same I'm doing here. But they were able to speak without me anywhere else. Please give them the same courtesy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the problem that we have in this state with gun violence is overwhelmingly our proximity to other states. States with very weak gun laws, especially Pennsylvania. And because of our proximity to Pennsylvania with its weak gun laws, our cities like Camden and Trenton and Patterson and Newark suffer like no other, because 80% of the guns traced from crime, according to ATF, in the last year for which the information is available, came from out of state, not from New Jersey gun owners. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate President, Leader. My name is David Matos. I'm also here representing New Jerseyans for Safety from Gun Violence, our coalition. I'm also a hunter and was a competitive shooter. I'd like to quickly run through Senate Bill 2723 with regard to what its provisions are and what we feel may need to be changed. We like the ID card, the electronic ID card. Senator Sweeney's absolutely correct. The card does not include any visible identification of the person being a firearms permit holder or handgun holder. We do, however, have a very serious concern that we share with Mayors Against Guns, that 4 years for a handgun permit is too long a period, considering especially when right now our limit is 90 days. We also have a concern with language in here that says that it's valid, a handgun permit is valid until the license expires. And I'm not sure, but I think it's my understanding that the Motor Vehicle Administrator in New Jersey has the administrative ability to extend driver's licenses, and we wouldn't want to see an extension of driver's licenses, validity of driver's license lead to an inadvertent extension of handgun permit validity either. The bill also says that on renewal of a handgun permit, the issuing authority has the discretion to conduct another criminal background check. We totally disagree with that. We think that the renewal should include, every renewal should include a new background check, particularly after 4 years have passed since the initial application and the initial check. We like the safety course requirement, but we like it for all holders of firearm purchaser IDs and handgun purchase permit holders. We disagree with grandfathering in current permit holders. It makes no sense to do that, and you're basically exempting, I think the figure was given before, 1 million people in New Jersey from mandatory safety course, which at max would be 4 hours. It's not an imposition, and given the safety concerns that would be addressed in a course, we think it's a good thing to do. We also take issue with some of the exemptions on the safety course that other than the NRA firearms course, which we believe is a more comprehensive course, and an applicant being a certified NRA instructor, these other exemptions are too weak. If you go online and you look at, for example, the New Jersey Hunters Education course, which you can take online, it makes no mention whatsoever of safety with regard to storage of weapons, weapons in the home. None of that is covered by that course. That course addresses safety for hunters out in the field, and it addresses things like courtesy among hunters and taking only what your limited catch should be, etc. So we don't agree with those exemptions. It's a small thing to ask everybody to take this course. One other exemption in there that's listed is the exemption for handguns, and we think that. Well, I'm sorry, I lost my spot here. This is hard to do. We didn't get this bill online last night until 10 o'clock, so it's been kind of tough to go through. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the point I want to say. Sorry. The curriculum the minimum curriculum that is proposed in the bill, such as responsible firearms ownership, safe storage, restricting access to firearms by unsupervised minors, matters relating to protecting the safety and well-being of families and children. None of those issues are addressed in the exemptions that you list. So the exemptions you're listing don't include your own criteria for minimum safety course. When it comes to ammunition, we simply prefer the terms of Assembly Bill 3645. I believe it's the committee substitute, which has already passed the Assembly, which addresses much more to our satisfaction the issue of ammunition sales and would prohibit any other ammunition sale than a face-to-face sale. We're happy with the inclusion of upgrading the penalty for failure to maintain firearms safely in the home, where it results in harm to, where it results in bodily injury or death.
Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock.
The end. That was painful.
Yeah. Ugh.
From the other cultures aside.
Chairman of the committee, many thanks for this opportunity to testify in a matter of great public concern to
for the people of New Jersey. I'm Dr. Joseph Schumann. For the last 40 years, I have served as a clergyman, a leader of the African Culture Society in Teaneck, New Jersey. I'm also a professor of human rights, teaching in the graduate school at Columbia University. And today, I'm a spokesperson for the Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence, an organization with more than 300 supporters in Bergen County. The Second Amendment has been invoked as a defense of virtually unfettered gun ownership, and I want to address, as a professor of human rights, the issue of the Second Amendment. Those who oppose gun control legislation often fall back to the argument that the Second Amendment is a right, and as such prohibits limitations, reasonable limitations, on sales and safety requirements for guns. I argue that this rationale is totally fallacious. With few exceptions, rights are not absolute. Both theoretically and in principle, all rights, virtually all rights, are subject to modification and regulation when they conflict with other rights.
Boo!
Okay, it simply cannot be any other way. When rights conflict and collide with each other, you have to fall back on a utilitarian calculus without doing damage, great damage to either rights. Okay, it simply cannot be any other way. In the legislation before you, the conflict of rights is very clear. In one scale, is the liberty of the individual to own a gun virtually without restriction. In the other is the right of all individuals to a secure and safe society and the right to life of all Americans. In a hierarchy of rights, we would argue that the right to life trumps all other rights, be it liberty, be it the pursuit of happiness, or the unencumbered right to own a gun. In that the preservation of life is the presupposition of all other rights. Without life, other rights will simply not matter very much. But I want to move from the theoretical to the empirical. An exhaustive study published last month in the Journal of the American Medical Association, in a review of all 50 states, concluded that a higher number of firearms laws in a state are associated with a lower rate of firearm fatalities in the state overall, and for suicides and homicides individually. A related nationwide study conducted by the Center for American Progress and published earlier this month produced similar results. Hey guys, if anyone wants to have a civil
Smooth move, I'm gonna pick a fight over here.
Testimony on the bills, please.
Yes. Okay. The statistical data pertaining to New Jersey confirm these findings. Stricter gun laws, lower rates of death by gunfight. The Brady organization in 2011 found New Jersey to have the second strongest gun laws in the country. The Center for the American Progress report I just cited, using data from the Center for Disease Control, found that New Jersey ranked 46th in firearm deaths based on the number per 100,000 in the period, the 10-year period from 2001 to 2010 when the study was done. True enough, I will admit, a correlation does not necessitate causation. But in this case, I would argue, the correlation is simply so powerful and replicated in so many states, not to mention internationally, when we compare the United States to other industrialized countries, that by passing the legislation before you, this committee will be upholding the supreme value of life and the right of all men, women, and children to live in a safe society. I should say, however, as well placed as New Jersey is with regard to its gun laws relative to other states, we simply cannot rest comfortably as long as a single person dies needlessly as a result of firearms. In 2010, data showed that 426 New Jerseyans were killed by guns, indicating that however strong our current laws are, they are simply not strong enough.
What about cars?
Doctors.
That we are already burdened with a surplus of gun laws, and to increase the restriction on guns of law-abiding, responsible gun owners is simply too onerous. I agree, it may be, I'm wrapping up here, it may be onerous, But we would argue that the bar regulating access to guns and their use, given the lethal power placed in the hands of the person who wields a firearm, that bar must be extremely high. We would argue that the restrictions that the legislation before you mandate is proportionate, I would say proportionate to the responsibilities inherent in owning a gun, given the deadly consequences of guns falling into the wrong hands and their being misused. Just one note of a particular bill. With regard to the bills before you, the Bergen County Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence endorses the entire roster with a few reservations. Noticing that approximately 75 to 80% of gun crimes committed in New Jersey are executed with weapons from out of state, we especially urge you to pass the bills which mandate penalty enhancements for gun trafficking, penalize licensed dealers knowingly involved in straw purchases, and enabling the seizures of motor vehicles used in firearm trafficking. There are a lot of other things I could say, but let me just make a final point, okay? On April 17th, Wednesday, the U.S. Senate, I think, acted shamefully. In fact, I would argue in a cowardly way. 90% of Americans want background checks. 85% of gun owners want background checks. Therefore, in New Jersey, I think the burden and the moral obligation falls on you. In the face of the failure of the U.S. Senate to pass reasonable gun legislation, we turn in fact to you, our legislators, in the hope that you will do the right thing. My final remark is that what stands before you, I would argue as a clergyman, is not merely a choice about legislation. It in fact is a very weighty moral choice. It is the choice between the safeguarding of human life as opposed to not applying encumbrances on those who seek to own guns. We would urge you to choose life. Thank you very much.
Wow, is he speaking of phonetic form?
Ladies and gentlemen, we gave
I just did have video.
first two groups. We're going to tighten it up from here on in. So please, the next group coming in,